Don't forget about LSU. It's only one loss in the SEC, so LSU's still alive for championship hopes, regardless of how they look week to week. And the last time out, hey, it looked pretty good on offense against the Gators in the Swamp. We got Carter on the line from Power Hour LSU on YouTube. Yeah. There he is, and he's got a new SEC channel that we've left the link down in the description section of the video. So what you need to do, it's at the top of the description section. Carter's new SEC channel, Power Hour SEC. Grab the link, follow him, and subscribe right there. Carter, what's going on tonight?
Mark, it's a good time to be a college football fan. It's a good time to be an SEC fan for this reason, okay? Now, there might be some people watching your channel that watches the NFL, which is fine. I like the NFL. You probably like the NFL some. We're both probably college guys. Well, you are a college guy. We're NFL. I am too, right? But this past weekend in the SEC, including the LSU-Florida game, was a shootout weekend. Everybody scoring in the 40s and the 50s. And the LSU, and ironically, the Kentucky-Mississippi State game was the only game that really wasn't, one of these games where it was high scoring, right? And that's the modern game. And the big takeaway from LSU was this was the first game where we saw them do that versus a Power 5 team. Now, what your Florida viewers would say is, well, our defense isn't great, and that's true. But at least LSU finally had a game where the wide receivers looked like the best wide receiver room in the country, and LSU's wide receiver room has a strong claim to that. But this was the first time, Mark, that we saw the LSU offense put together an offensive showing that, couldn't have been any better than, how they started. 6 drives, 6 touchdowns to jump out to that big 42-21 lead.
And Carter, that was my impression of the game. It was not only that Jayden Daniels has played his best game as an LSU Tiger, but it's more so the combination of Jayden Daniels with 6 touchdowns, 3 through the air, 3 on the ground, and the wide receiver room, Kayshon Boutte in particular, being on the same page, because we just saw a number of misconnections, not running the right way, not being on the same page through the first 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, and this was the first time Jayden's really thrown the football as well as he threw it. Now, give the LSU wide receivers a lot of credit. Mark, the level of difficulty of some of the catches that they made was really high. Jayden, look, for as great as he was, and the numbers were absolutely phenomenal, and I'll say this, Mark, if you've not sat down and watched Jayden Daniels play, he is one of the most special runners of the football. There's a lot of good dual threat quarterbacks in the SEC. Nobody runs it better than Jayden Daniels. And that's crazy to say because the best touchdown run of the game actually came from Anthony Richardson. But still, Jayden is a truly spectacular Lamar Jackson-esque kind of runner. Not quite that special, but he is so special when he's running, and he did it with 3 rushing touchdowns versus Florida. But, his passing still is kind of clunky, and some of the throws he made versus Florida were kind of clunky. They were knucklers. They were thrown a little bit late, and this was the first game, once again, versus a Power 5 team. We saw the LSU wide receivers dominate. They made so many difficult 50-50 kinds of catches that, Mark, that they were not making earlier in the year. Now, a lot of that, once again, comes down to Jayden throwing a better and more catchable ball, but the truth still remains the same. Jayden Daniels played better, and he at least gave his receivers a chance to make a play on those footballs. And that's all Brian Kelly was asking Jayden Daniels to do. Give our wide receiver room, which has at least 4 future NFL players on it, a chance. That's all he said. And this past week, Jayden did that very thing. So, moving forward, Mark, for this offense to continue to move forward, they need to keep allowing Jayden to have enough time to be back there and make those big throws. Getting Will Campbell back at left tackle, the SEC Lineman of the Week, was absolutely huge. And Dem Brock also called better plays. But to go even further, Mark, they're going to have to keep being vertical. And, it's all about the explosive play battle. And if they do that versus Ole Miss, they'll have a chance to win.
So when you say calling better plays against Florida, what are you pointing to there? What did you like that they did that they haven't implemented before?
Play action was better. Obviously, getting guys just more simpler throws. The throw to John Emery was a very simple read for a touchdown. John Emery was wide open, and a lot of that was the play design. There was a 3rd and 8 that was completed to help LSU get their second touchdown. If they didn't complete that, they probably kicked the field goal. And it was a simple, kind of a screen, a pick play, if you will, to Jayden Jenkins. And then that just helped build Jayden's confidence. When you get those early simple throws, the more difficult 50-50 tight window throws become better. And then one thing that Jayden did specifically, and we did an hour-long film study, we do an hour-long film study after every game, was he started throwing with some anticipation. And the truth, Mark, and quarterback coaches will tell you the same thing. If you anticipate windows and throw with confidence, you throw a more catcher-friendly ball. And if you look really closely, Jayden's spirals on those kinds of throws were tighter. They were cleats in the ground, fully confident. I'm trusting my anticipation kind of throws. Those throws got better. And some of that, once again, was better play calling and better protection from LSU this week. So those things are very key. And Mark, something else that's really changed for this LSU offense is their running backs have played better. They're starting to break tackles, which is something that they didn't do early in the season. So give Josh Williams, Mark, I know you love a good walk-on story. It's rare. I got this Jeremy Hill jersey in the background. He's a great friend of mine. He broke a lot of tackles. Leonard Fournette broke a lot of tackles. LSU, they're used to seeing a Clyde Edwards-Helaire type talent back there. And early in the year, they didn't have it. And now Josh Williams is playing better. John Emery is playing better. And why is that big? Well, pretty much every team in the SEC West has a big-time running back that can go out there and break tackles and break off long runs, except for LSU. And now LSU has 2 that are doing the little things right while also making explosive plays happen on their own.
Folks, we got Carter on the line from Power Hour LSU, so lock it in there, and also on Carter's new SEC channel. Get there, Power Hour SEC. We've got the link in the description section right at the top. Just grab it, go right there. Please subscribe. You won't regret it, no doubt about that. Is this what we can expect out of LSU? Is it going to be? That's what we're getting out of. This is a team that against Tennessee can match them in talent. Now, of course, with Tennessee doing what it did last week, it's no shame losing to Tennessee, but obviously not too competitive in that game. Just can we expect the bumpy ride to continue?
It can. Give Brian Kelly a lot of credit. He had this team ready to play better than he had in weeks prior. Once again, the slow start, obviously Florida scored first, but it wasn't a slow start offensively. So give BK a lot of credit for coaching better. But, you move to the other aspects of the game of football, special teams and defense. It's been a brutal couple of weeks for both of those units. Now, in defense of the defense, if you will, the defense has played really well in some games this year. Special teams has not played well at all. It has been a major issue, Mark, in every Power 5 game for LSU. So if you're an Ole Miss fan and you're not familiar with LSU, well, LSU is amongst the SEC's worst when it comes to just overall consistent special teams play. So that obviously has to get better. You're going to lose a lot of games if you've been bad on special teams. Alabama, of course, had a rough game on special teams this past weekend versus Tennessee. Cost him potentially that game. And, that could happen this past weekend versus Ole Miss. So, when you go up against a Lane Kiffin coach team, you better be ready to go and you better clean up the small things. And Brian Kelly acknowledged how talented of a coach Lane is, especially at taking advantage of your weaknesses. So that's going to be key for LSU this weekend.
I saw Florida State start to finish. I saw most of the Auburn game. I checked in on Florida. The Tennessee game, I watched the entire first half, every play, and got into the third quarter until it was time to say goodbye and look for another game that was more competitive. And what I've seen out of the LSU defense was still seeing guys that flash that vintage LSU. Okay, there are freaks out there on the defensive side of the ball. Now they're running into an Ole Miss rushing attack, as you well know, that everybody thinks Lane Kiffin and they think mismatches and they think quarterback development, and all of that's true, but he loves to run the football. They only threw it 19 times against Auburn and ran it for 448. So this is a serious challenge coming up.
It's amazing. You lose Snoop Connor and you become a better running back room. Yeah, Quinshawn Judkins and
Henry Parrish.
And Henry Parrish. Quinshawn's a beast, obviously. Zach Evans as well. Lane is really good. Now, personally, Lane Kiffin was my number 2 coach during LSU's coaching search. Now, I prefer Brian Kelly, of course, but because he is the actual coach of LSU. But that's how highly I thought of Lane Kiffin as a play caller and just as a personality. I just love his energy. And I'm a Lane fan. I know you shouldn't say that as an LSU person or whatever, but he provides so much joy, and interest into a program that quite simply didn't have that under Matt Luke. So once again, Brian was very complimentary of Lane. I think it was something that was very interesting. Now, here's where it gets even more fascinating is, Mark, I was kind of shocked because, throughout the coaching search, I was very vocal as a Lane supporter for the job. I was also shocked that there were more LSU fans that felt that way as well. I thought I would just get littered with, oh, he's immature and the Twitter stuff. I don't think he'd be a good fit with all the pressure at LSU. But there are a lot of LSU fans that said, look, I would love Lane Kiffin to be the coach. There were former players who watched my channel who said the same thing to me. They said, look, the modern game is about scoring points, and Lane will guarantee that you're going to score a lot of points, and LSU historically will figure out the defensive side of the football. So, there is a little bit of that. There are LSU fans that say, look, I'm super happy with Brian Kelly. And honestly, Brian Kelly is a home run hire. And I think BK's going to do great things. But there are some people that in the back of their head say, well, if we had approached Lane, would he have taken the job? And I think he would have. So, for me, I got a lot of respect from Lane and what they do offensively. And LSU's defense is stumbling right now. Some of that is injuries. Some of that is fatigue. They have played in a lot of these kinds of shootout, chaotic kind of games. So, those things do begin to pile up. They've lost Major Burns, one of their best safeties. And, the secondary has been exposed these past couple of weeks. So hopefully the defensive coordinator, Matt House, finds ways to get it done. And honestly, Mark, the story of this LSU defense has been Harold Perkins, the true freshman, 5-star sensation. A lot of A&M fans still sad that he decided to go to LSU. Mark, he was my highest graded LSU recruit since Derek Stingley, LSU commit. And he has lived up and exceeded expectations this year. So if you're an Ole Miss fan and you're not familiar with the LSU defense, number 40, Harold Perkins, is the real deal playmaker for this D.
And it's funny you bring him up because when I said certain guys have flashed and I wasn't going to get into specifics because I was going to leave that up to you, he was the guy that came to mind first and foremost. He is the guy. Yes. He's been
big time. Big time. I mean, he's truly a special player. When you think linebackers, you think someone like Patrick Willis, why your typical thumper. Harold Perkins is more of like your modern day linebacker who can rush off the edge. He can blitz. He can cover. He had a big interception versus Auburn. There's nothing he can't do. And, he was mostly a running back in high school. He's truly special at everything they ask him to do. Special teams. He's been good as a special teams coverage guy as well. So obviously him, BJ Ojolari, is someone that everybody's pretty familiar with the number 18 uniform. So I'm very excited to see this defense hopefully bounce back versus an Ole Miss offense that is special.
You mentioned injuries, Carter. I know Jack Besh is part of that mix of players. He's had a back issue. He's effective out of the slot. Well, it's difficult to get information, but do you expect any of these guys back this week?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with Jack Besh, honestly, and I know Jack, and he's, going through a tough time right now because he's had issues as a returner. He muffed a punt a few weeks ago versus, this last week versus Florida, and he muffed a kickoff return versus Tennessee. That is the biggest thing surrounding Jack Besh right now, who is actually going to be the returner. They've had Clayton, a walk-on, actually be the punt returner, and I also expect him to be the kickoff returner versus Ole Miss as well. And I think LSU is just going to say, look, since we've had so much issues muffing stuff on kickoff returns and punt returns, we're just going to fair catch every time. So I expect that to be LSU's strategy moving forward in that aspect. But, as far as health, LSU's just been very unlucky in that aspect. And we'll see if that actually, happens and becomes a big thing versus Ole Miss as well.
Carter, you know this better than I do, covering the SEC on a daily basis, that, at least all the good programs have 3 or 4 different rivalries going in different directions. And for LSU, this is just another one with Ole Miss. Yeah. What is the specific juice, vibe, attitude between these two?
Yeah, for LSU fans, it's not really much. Yep. Like, I think LSU Florida, ironically, has become the most visceral, as in we authentically hate you. I just think that that's been the case. I don't really see that much hate between LSU and Ole Miss as much as other LSU fans potentially do. Now, LSU, of course, has the go to Hades Ole Miss chant that they always do. And the Magnolia Bowl has kind of become a thing. But part of it is, Ed Orgeron and Lane were close friends. And, LSU and Ole Miss haven't had as many legendary back and forth kind of games that other matchups have had. So yeah, there's history. Billy Cannon, the only other Heisman winner other than Joe Burrow, had his big moment versus Ole Miss back in '58. But, for me, and I'm going to get pushback on this as well. That's fine. Ole Miss isn't the game as much as it is for some other LSU fans. So there is some history. Also, proximity plays a role in that as well. But, for me, Mark, it's, just another game.